Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. This video is going to be a bit of a double bang at two different stories, both involving Dillian Whyte. One where Dillian Whyte is dismissing Joseph Parker, dampening down the talk of a rematch with Parker, who he beat in 2018. And two, Deontay Wilder, the WBC champion, saying that Dillian Whyte has had his chances to fight him and that he's effectively had 4 strikes, as Wilder puts it. So we'll get to both. So buckle in. Let's go. And starting with the Joseph Parker talk. So Joseph Parker has been pining away after a rematch with Dillian Whyte since he lost to Whyte in July 2018. That was a relatively close fight. Whyte was dropped in that fight. He was down in the 12th round. Parker was down twice, once in the 9th from a left hook, and also a head clash put him down in the 2nd round. It was ruled a knockdown. Ultimately, that was quite pivotal on the scorecards. Whyte, though, got up in the 12th round, went on to win the fight. And Joseph Parker has been calling for it after his 2 comeback fight wins, one against Alexander Flores and one against Alex Leapai. After the Leapai win, again reiterated he wants that rematch with Dillian Whyte. And Whyte, and you can see here on screen, this is a story from snuffed.co.nz. Headline here, Dillian Whyte ridicules terrible Joseph Parker as heavyweight rivalry ramps up. Well, the whole ramps up thing, I think that's maybe over-egging it. I don't necessarily think there's a massive rivalry there. I think Parker wants the rematch, but for the moment, Dillian Whyte has no interest in it. There's no real beef between the two. It was a good fight, but it's not exactly one that people are baying for and calling for and saying that that is a must-have rematch that should happen next. It's not that kind of fight. I think there are some people who are interested in the rematch and want it to happen desperately, but for others, I think I fall into this camp where I'm just like, well, if the rematch happens, it's a good fight, but I don't mind if they both fight other opponents, fresh names that we haven't seen. The rematch can always wait. But Dillian Whyte, quoted here in the story, I think he was talking to Sky Sports, yes he was, Parker was never in my plans. I beat him already, so why would he be in my plans? Somebody I've beaten already. He wants me to be in his plans, but he's not in my plans. That's what I don't get. Him and David Higgins are talking rubbish. Why would I chase someone I've already beaten? It makes no sense. Dillian Whyte's statements, and I'll come to some other comments, but I'll just wade in there because he says, why would he chase someone I've already beaten? Well, didn't he just rematch Derek Chisora? Someone he'd already beaten? Let's face it, Dillian Whyte, until he loses, I don't see him being interested in a rematch with Joseph Parker. I don't. But someone like Derek Chisora, who we just rematched and beat for a second time, the first fight in 2016 was close. Whyte got the decision, split decision win, and the second fight, Whyte was down on the cards against Derek Chisora, but he took that for money. It was clearly all about money, and that's what it's going to sort of become important later on with some of Deontay Wilder's statements, because Whyte has made some choices in his career, and in 2018, he did to some extent prioritize money over different positioning within the heavyweight division, different eliminators that he could have taken that would have positioned him in a different way, and one of those fights was Joseph Parker, one of them was Derek Chisora. So he says that why would he chase someone he's already beaten? Well, he has a history of it. So Joseph Parker is clearly hoping that he will be open to a rematch. But like I say, I don't think that will happen until Dillian Whyte loses, just because what does he really have to gain from it except money at the moment? He's on to fresh opponents, people we haven't seen, and there is no real demand, I don't believe, for the rematch right now. Not to the point where you have it. Derek Chisora got that rematch with Dillian Whyte after a stunning knockout win over Carlos Takam. That breathed life into his career, and as a result of that, it brought more interest to a potential rematch, and Eddie Hearn capitalized on that, did the pay-per-view, and that was probably a relatively successful payday for Dillian Whyte. So, yeah, it's one of these things where I can understand why Dillian Whyte is not looking back at Joseph Parker, because he doesn't have to at the moment. He is looking for a title shot, and just fighting Parker right now doesn't make any sense. Well, not necessarily, but then again, Dillian Whyte is facing Oscar Rivas. Nothing really on the line there. It is effectively just another money fight, but he has to do something while he's waiting for a title shot. But if he lost to Rivas, well, then I could see potentially, as early as the end of the year, that Joseph Parker could end up facing Dillian Whyte in a rematch. I could see it. But that's more a scenario that's based off White losing his next fight. But if he keeps winning, I don't expect him to face Parker anytime soon. Maybe later in their careers, but not right now if he continues to win. So if we get to this other story, so see here on screen, exclusive, Deontay Wilder faults Dillian Whyte on WBC shot. He had 4 strikes. This is a worldboxingnews.net article. And what is strike 1? So he said that he told Dillian Whyte at the end of the day, Dillian Whyte could have been given that opportunity. I told Dillian Whyte, I gave him 2 options. I told him, sign with PBC, Al Heyman's premier boxing champions, when he came over here for network shopping or whatever he was over here doing. So I told him, yeah, just sign with us, a 1-fight deal, then no problem, we'll get the fight on. We can get it on, I'll give you a shot. But that was one time. Strike. Then I told him to fight Luis Ortiz. You fight him. You got my word. You got me. As I said, and everybody knows when I speak, that's my word, that's my bond, and I don't go back on it. That's why when I say things, I own up to all the responsibility because I mean what I say. I mean it, and I told you, you got it if you beat Ortiz. That's quite a mouthful. What did he do? He didn't want to fight him. Strike 2. Then the WBC came and ordered him to fight Ortiz. They ordered him to, and he didn't want the fight. That's strike 3. And if we just go down here, strike 4. I don't want people to feel sorry for him. I really don't. I know he came out and said it's a shame what's going on, but it's a shame what's been going on of his own actions. I want to clear that up. It's because of his own actions. He allowed himself not to have this opportunity because he's really had 3 times, really 4. I'm not really going to bring up the situation of when I was going back to the Joshua because that's where I told Hearn to put him on before the fight. I said, if you give me Dillian, then put Joshua on straight after in the next fight. So that's a solid strike 4. That's Deontay Wilder's statements. And I'm sure there's going to be quite a bit of reaction to some of these comments by Deontay Wilder. There has been a bit of a back and forth in more recent times about Dillian White, a guy who's got one of the best records for a guy who hasn't had a title shot. Is he a guy who was really hard done by or a guy who was the master of his own demise? He turned down a voluntary shot against Anthony Joshua. He turned down other eliminators against Luis Ortiz, a final eliminator against Kubrat Pulev. And there are other choices he could have made, but it's been a deliberate strategy, at least in 2018, where they took some of the money fights. So, to a degree, I agree with Wilder, but of course, Wilder has obviously got his own sort of view of the world on some of his comments. But I think some of what he's saying is also the reality of the sport too. Silos matter. In this day and age in the heavyweight division, silos matter. If you're in a certain stable of fighters that's connected to a certain network, we've got 3 different silos floating around in the heavyweight division, sort of Fox, Showtime and PBC. You have ESPN and Top Rank, and then you have Matchroom USA, Matchroom Boxing UK, tied in with DAZN and Sky Sports. 3 different silos, and all don't necessarily work with that often that well in terms of the cross-promotion. You don't see a lot of fights going in between sort of pinballing around. Generally, they fight on the network that is connected to them. So, there's nothing new in some of this with what Deontay Wilder is saying. He's actually, sort of proved that out. If you're in the PBC stable, you're more likely to get a shot. Luis Ortiz and a whole number of other of his championship opponents were in the PBC stable. But I guess, there is the other side of the coin here that Dillian Whyte has been the number 1 contender in the WBC for 600 odd days here. Dillian Whyte is obviously wanting to get to Deontay Wilder, but obviously he wants to, with Eddie Hearn, to have some of the things his way and for the WBC to bend to his will to some extent. And I think we've seen that that's not a strategy that's working at the moment. And for whatever reason, this resolution about the WBC mandatory shot seems to have delayed. It was meant to be sort of finalised a week or so ago, and it's been in the pipeline for several weeks. Hasn't quite come out yet. So whatever the hold up is, who knows? It's going to come out in time. But yeah, Dillian Whyte, it's he's created quite a successful narrative, at least among some fans, that he is so super hard done by. But boxing is prize fighting after all. We sort of forget this. It is a business masquerading as a sport. So I have a little bit of sympathy for him, but at the same time, I think, well, there's been opportunities to position within sanctioning bodies, and he's opted for money fights on pay-per-view in the United Kingdom. for his career, his financial security going forward. I think that's a great decision what he did, but there are consequences to, every action. And I think some of what Wilder is effectively getting at here is that through his actions, not signing with PBC or not fighting Luis Ortiz, that he sort of done himself out of at least what would be a quicker route to a shot with Deontay Wilder. I guess, people will make of it what they will. It's, heavyweight boxing is messy and murky, and everyone is always, especially with the public through the media, is trying to jostle for position in people's minds, trying to curry fans' favour, get them to think, this is the actual situation, where sometimes, it is all just smoke and mirrors. But yeah, Deontay Wilder launching into sort of White sort of came from a little bit from left field, but it's interesting, while White is launching into Joseph Parker, snuffing out talk of a rematch. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.